The Redondo Beach Center for Spiritual Living and the Ministry of Dr. Moira Foxe presents Living Ideas.
Okay, and welcome into this very wonderful good day. And as I was saying this morning, today we get to think about something we love to talk about, myself. I don't know anybody who doesn't like to talk about themselves. But today we're going to look at that word and see it differently. And we're going to, I'm knowing, leave this room with a whole different sense and sensibility about myself. And as we look at those words, we ask ourselves, myself. Well, what is myself? Who is myself? What is this thing called myself? And as we just pause and listen, things will come to us. And as I paused and listened, what came to me was my and me has absolutely nothing to do with the great self of myself. My and me they're terms that pertain to the human condition, and they belong to the human condition. But in spirit, there is no my, there is no me. There's only the one, there's only the great self. And so today I want us all to leave this room understanding who and what we are more fully and more deeply, because that's all we're here to do, to discover who and what we are, and then to wake up in that and celebrate that and have great good lives as a consequence of that understanding and realization. So as we take this thing called the self and look at it in regard to ourselves, what we come up with is the understanding and the realization that's offered to us, if we so desire to imbibe it, embrace it, and be one with it, is that the great self of me is the aspect of me that is created in the image and in the likeness of my source. I am the image, I am the likeness of my source, and in the image and likeness I am an aspect of the great self, and that's the truth of me. And how am I the image and likeness of my source? Through consciousness, through intelligence, through my ability to think, through my ability to choose, through my ability to co-create. That's how I am the image and likeness of my source. The challenge is that we don't really identify with that truth of our being very much at all. And some of us, maybe not ever by the time we leave this plane. What we do identify with is our human condition, our humanity, the physical aspect of life and living, and the life of the senses, what we see, what we perceive, what we hear, and so on. And we see ourselves as separate entities, as separate individuals in life, living life as that. Instead of understanding, that's only a small, very small aspect of my beingness. I am not only a human being, I am most especially a spiritual entity, most especially a spiritual expression, most especially a spiritual consciousness, a spiritual awareness. And that's the aspect of me that lives on everlastingly, goes on forever. As for the body, the physicality that I'm wearing while I'm here, that, is put aside when I'm finished here and gets recycled into something else. And so that doesn't come along with me, but the image and the likeness that I am of the divine is what comes along with me. Now, contrary to common belief, it is not my circumstances that defines me or that creates my destiny for me. Not at all. It is, what defines me is the thought I entertain, the idea I entertain, the opinion I entertain about myself and life and living. That's what defines me, and that's the only thing that defines me. You and I know people who are born into dire circumstances and they rise up to live a glorious life. You and I know people that are born into the fullness and the plenty and the silver spoon and all of that experience, and yet they grow up and ashes is what they produce in their lives. And then there's all the various levels in between that. So what defines you, what defines me, is nothing more than my consciousness, my mental atmosphere, what I think, what I believe about myself, what I come to know about myself. That's what defines me. And it's the only thing that defines me. We are all the time reshaping ourselves, remaking ourselves through the way that we think and the way that we entertain opinion and idea about ourselves and life and living. And we're all the time depleting ourselves because of the same process. So we're either, raising ourselves or lowering ourselves through the way we're thinking, through the way we're feeling, and what our mental atmosphere is like. I love the story of the little boy who is in awe of the gentleman that came to dinner one night, and it happened to be his father's boss. And he was enthralled by what he was seeing and what he was hearing. And at the end of the dinner, the boss turned to him and said to him, he said, "Well, why are you looking at me like that all of the time?" And the little boy responds and he says, "My dad says you're a self-made man." And then the man pridefully says, "Well, I suppose I am." And then the little boy said, "Why did you make yourself like that?" Why did you make yourself like that? Because he was, everything the caricature of a boss can be that you don't want a boss to be. And so the little boy was just thinking, gosh, if you're a self-made man, I don't know why you want to make yourself like that. And yet, isn't that a question that we could ask ourselves every single day? Why am I making myself like this? Why am I making myself like this? And I wonder what that same little boy would think if he was hanging around with us for a day. Would he say to us in the same tone, "Why do you want to make yourself like that?" And that's what we're thinking about this week. We're thinking about the possibility of transformation through reshaping ourselves, remaking ourselves, having a do-over, if you like, through the changing of our thinking and the changing of our moods and the changing of our usual way of doing business in life. And it's given to you and it's given to me to flourish, to thrive, to accomplish, to realize the purpose for which we came into this world. And that purpose is simply to come home to the great self of ourselves, to realize the great self of ourselves, to wake up. To wake up, and in waking up, know who we are. And in order to do that, there's just a few little things that we have to know. But one of those things is to have the real concept about ourselves. And the only real concept that we can get about ourselves is the understanding of what our spiritual concept of ourselves is. I mean, even have you ever thought about what your spiritual concept of yourself is, ever? Don't answer the question, it's rhetorical. I will not shame anybody in the classroom today. But, it's a question that is a very valuable question to ask. What kind of a spiritual concept do I have of myself? Do not get spirituality mixed up with religious when you're doing this. Because just to think of ourselves religiously could be to confine ourselves. And in confining ourselves, depending upon the particular religious philosophy that we embrace, could be very confining, or it could be very liberating. So it has a possibility of limitation there, because as Ernest Holmes says, within every doctrine and dogma there is limitation. Within every doctrine and dogma there is limitation, because it's put the final stop, full stop at the end of whatever the statements of truth are in that particular faith-based philosophy. So we must be very careful and understand that spirituality is universal. It's far more fully embracing of the one in all and respecting the one in all. So I need to have a sense of myself as a spiritual being and what that concept is. I was hearing about a conversation that this gentleman had. He was discussing, they were all discussing various faiths, various religions, and one man said, You know, those people are really very fine people, and they have good morals, and they have fine, high ideals. But what a pity they don't have the true doctrine, you see. What a pity they don't have the true doctrine, whatever that is. Whatever this, what do we consider true doctrine to be? I mean, a strict adherence to a body of, doctrines and dogmas? Or might that true doctrine be a practical living out of spirituality? You know, there's a big gap in between that. So you and I get to ask ourselves that same question for ourselves. You know, what is my true doctrine? Because whatever that is, it's going to affect the image I have of myself and how I see myself. Not only how I see myself, but how I see everybody else as well. Because as I see myself, I see all others too. That's the way that works. So we are given the invitation this week to pause for a moment or two and ponder what is true, what is real, what is whole, what is wholesome in my life, in all life, and in living. Because that's where I need to be focused. That's where my mind needs to be set. That's where my fascination needs to be. And so I have to stop this incessant over-identification with the humanity of myself and the terrible treadmill that can get me on, and the freneticism of that. Doing, I'm a human doing, especially at this time of year, as I was saying this morning. It's running around and to this and to that, and having the lists and checking the lists and crossing off the list and flying around the marketplace and endeavoring to, get all the stuff for Christmas and go out there and get all those gifts for the people that I am going to gift this year. And oh, sorry, I haven't got time to talk to you. I haven't got time to see you. I haven't got time to have lunch with you, because you see, I'm out there frenetically looking for the perfect gift for you, and I can't do it all. So, I'll go out there and I'll scour and search for the perfect gift for you, but I haven't time to see you, to speak to you, or to be in your company. Go figure what kind of intelligence that is. And yet that's how we are. That's how we are. That's the true spirit of gifting, it seems. But no, it's not the true spirit of Christmas, that's for sure, because the true spirit of Christmas is presence. E-N-C-E, not T-S, presence. That's the true spirit of Christmas. And then, having scoured everywhere, having been frenetically looking for that perfect gift, it turns out it's not the perfect gift. That's ho-hum as far as they're concerned, whatever. Very often, not always. Unless you really thoroughly know a person, very, very well, it's difficult to ascertain what would be the perfect gift for that person. But I am suggesting that taking somebody to lunch would be perhaps considered the perfect gift in a time like this. Just saying. And then to kind of then savor the flavor of what the true meaning of Christmas is, or Hanukkah is. We're in the season of Hanukkah now. We're in the season of Advent, the season of Hanukkah, which is the celebration of light. Every day for 9 days, our Jewish brothers and sisters will be lighting a candle, as each day progresses. And every Sunday in Advent, all our Christian friends will be lighting, the next candle in Advent and the next candle in Advent. It's the season for light spreading, light sharing, light upliftment, lightness of being, so that we're ready to celebrate that understanding at the winter solstice of our appreciation of what it is to have light in our lives, and the coming back again of light dawning. And of course, in Christianity, we've Christianized the winter solstice celebration and thinking that Christ-conscious awareness is truly the light in our world, and it is. And it's all very beautifully interwoven, and all of us have some kind of light celebration around this time of year, all of the religions. For the Hindus, it's Diwali, and so on and so forth. And so what we're asked to be just now, as we're coming into our own and realizing the true self of ourselves, is to be that lightness and that softness and that gentleness and that kindness out there in the world as we move through these days of the holidays, of the celebration of whatever our celebration is. And of course, immediately after Christmas, you have that letdown feeling that most people have, and it doesn't have to be a letdown feeling. Kwanzaa begins on Christmas Day. It's another celebration of light. For 7 days, candles are lit, and the blessings of life are celebrated and given thanks for at that time. And so there's always the symbology of light taking place throughout the year somewhere or another. And that's to remind us that we are the lightness of being. We are the light that shines in the darkness. And that it's silly, to say the very least, and unintelligent to sit on that light and hide that light and not share it and not spread it and not engage with the light, the rest of the light in the world at the level of light, enlightenment, to go into that lightness of being, which is the invitation today as we go through this week to understand who shows up here today. Is it the little self of myself, or is it the great self of myself? Is it that unified understanding and awareness of the oneness of being, or that scattered or fragmented awareness of the little self? It's me, 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 and I have to get it done, and it's me, and it's up to me, and if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it, and blah, 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 and it's all that frenetic sort of energy. And then the pressure of that leans upon us when we think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get to the end of this list. And you won't if you keep making lists. You'll never get to the end of your list if you keep making lists. So how can we overcome that tendency and that habit of ours to feel that we're depending and relying upon something outside of ourselves, albeit a list, and come into a more effective and joyous and centered and balanced way of being as we show up in the graced blessing of a new day, Every new day is a brand new opportunity, a plain, beautiful white page upon which to make a mark of some kind or another. And we want to let it to be for the good. When I wake up in the morning, one of my affirmations, I have several, but one of my favorite affirmations when I awake in the morning is to open my eyes and say, God woke up in me today, and now I choose to wake up in God. I go forth to meet my good as my good comes forth to meet me. This is a great, this is a grand, this is a good day. It is the day that life has made, and I am glad and I rejoice in it. And I get to get up and I get to go to work. To work on what? To work on my purpose, the reason why I am here. I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, it's another weekday, I have to go to work. Do we realize the privilege it is, the blessing it is, to get to go to work every day? It's a blessing, it's a privilege. The majority of people on this plane do not have that privilege. We have. Now, the thing about work is, if you're getting up in the morning dreading to go to your work, it's not your work. That's not your work. Your work is whatever it is that assists you and helps you to succeed in fulfilling your purpose, the purpose for which you came here. And that purpose is always to express life, and to express it abundantly, and to express it fully, and to share that expression of an abundant life. It's to know your joy, and to know your joy completely, and it is to realize that I am the heir to the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of good. There are only a few spiritual things to know. That's all. Just a few. And they are to know that I am a child of God, a child of the universe, created in God's image and God's likeness. I came in as an emanation of my source with the capacity to co-create with my Creator great good on this plane. To know that, to really know that. I mean, how many of us have sat down to really know and understand that I am a child of my source, a child of the universe, entitled to the kingdom, given the kingdom, knowing that all that the Father has is mine. How many of us sit down and contemplate all that the Father has is mine? That's one of the simple things to know spiritually. Another thing to know spiritually is to be still so that I can know the self of myself. To be still so that I can uncover the hidden splendor within me and reveal it. To understand it's not something I can learn or acquire. It is something that's already within me, simply to be discovered and expressed. And then a third thing to know is that I have to be able to desire and want to and be thrilled about entering into my inner chamber and shutting the door. The most important part of that statement is shutting the door. Very often we can enter into the inner chamber and leave the door open, which means all those distractions from the outside are getting to me and I cannot enter in fully. It means to leave the shoes of your humanity outside of the door and enter in to that full sense of oneness with the presence. Remember, only God can be where God is, nothing else. God knows only God's self. So nothing other than God can be in the presence of God. So when I enter into that inner chamber, I have to go in as my divine aspect of myself. I can't go in laden down with woes and wails and all of the human conditions that I carry around on my shoulders. I have to leave them outside. They don't belong where I am entering in. And once I enter into that awareness with one purpose in mind, and it's to sing the praises of life and living, to be in joy in the presence of my Creator, to give praise to my Creator, to give gratitude to my Creator, to love up on my Creator. When I'm doing all of that, everything else dissipates itself and goes away. Cannot be where that oneness and that sense of presence is. Now, it's as simple and as challenging as that. And you and I get to do it. We can do it. It's given to us to do it, to enter in. What is prayer? Prayer is simply the opportunity to do exactly that, to enter into the inner chamber, simply to sing the song of life, to sing praises and thanksgiving to the source of our being that gave us the fullness of the kingdom and all the gifts therein, that told us that all that the source had was ours, that told us that our only reason for being was to express the Almighty. Our only reason for being was to have life and have it in abundance, and that our joy may be complete. How many of us contemplate that or ever get to belief in that, far less knowing it? Belief is the first step. Knowing it is the final step. And yet, that's what's given to you, what's given to me to do, to know all of that. To know that I am a child of God, a child of the universe, the image, the likeness of divinity itself. And it's given to me to flourish, to thrive, to be in joy, to experience abundance, and to celebrate it through the expressing of it. And the expressing of it is the sharing of it. Because what I know about myself, I cannot know about myself alone. I must know it about you too. When I come home to the great self of myself, the beauty and the grace of it is that I come home to the beauty and the grace of your great self too. And I behave accordingly. I think accordingly. I feel accordingly. I interact with you accordingly. And I can be in the presence of God wherever I am and with whomever I am, all of the time. All of the time. Not some of the time, all of the time. And if my focus is on the self of myself and not myself and me all the time, then I will be in conscious awareness of the presence of life, God, infinite being, the Almighty, the divine, all of the time. And that's how I wake up. That's how I enter into my inheritance the kingdom of allness and fullness and wholeness and completeness itself. It's given to you to be in that conscious awareness, and it's given to me. So this week, as we go about the business of life and living, let us bless our humanity by absolutely dousing it in our divinity and knowing that the divinity will take care of all of our human needs. This is what is available to you. This is what is offered to you. And it's up to you to choose or not to choose, to know all that the Father has is mine. I am its image and its likeness. I always have been, I am now regardless, and I always will be the image, the likeness of the source of my being, and it's good, and it's very good, and so it is.